Today's kids and teens are growing up with tap to pay and one-click ordering and zero wait times. And if the church doesn't adapt, the next generation will see generosity as outdated, automated, or maybe even worse, irrelevant.
There's good news in the midst of all this. You don't need guilt trips and you don't need flashy gimmicks to teach giving. You just need a strategy rooted in discipleship, joy, and example, modeling it for your kids.
That's why we're going to talk about shaping hearts and not just habits, and why that work has to start today.
Let's get started.
Well, hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Next Sunday podcast. I'm here with my friend and the amazing, the incredible, the stupendous Jim Sheppard.
Wait, again, I thought somebody else would be when you start that intro.
Set up. I could say so much, but
I would ask you if you'd call my mom and got that, but she's passed. That would be kind of a miracle if that happened. That felt like something my mom might say, and here you are coming in there doing that.
Hey, I'm one of your biggest fans.
Well, yeah. You and I have been, we talked a little bit about this when we did the episode on succession, and we're in a season where we're really living out, the whole idea of Romans 12:10, trying to outdo one another and showing up.
Yeah.
And at the point, our wives are a little concerned about us.
They're like, wow, gosh, you guys really like each other. Yeah.
Hey,
what a great
romance going on here. Romance.
What a great friendship. And just, man, what a privilege it is to get to sit down with you, Jim, and just wrestle with ideas that we hope serve church leaders. It gets a chance for you and I to talk about some things that really matter. I know a lot of these really matter to your heart. Today's topic is one, it matters to you. It might even matter more to me.
It matters more to you because of a lot of your background, but because the person on the other side of the bed from you is one of, in my opinion, one of the top 3 people in America. Her voice, Jessica Bealer's voice, when it comes to teen and children's and kids ministry, is just one of the best. When I hear her talk, she drops gems at a rate that are just, they're amazing. They're just like, what? And of course, when I asked her one time, I said, Jessica, so when you work with clients, with generics, when you work with clients, do they ever try to hire you? And she rolled her eyes and she said, every one of them. And I was like, I knew that. Why did I even ask the question? I'd be trying to hire you.
Yeah.
I'd be trying to, in fact, I would say, Jessica, I'd just put a check out there with your name on it and no number and just say, fill it out. You can come on board. So I know that she has, a lot of this stuff, but you also compared notes with Jess, and you got a little bit of input, some extra input for today. So I think today's episode will be special.
Yeah, for sure. We're talking about what it looks like to engage kids and teens in generosity as part of the church. Where are we discipling appropriately? Where does this fit in the rhythm of curriculum and all the other things that we need to teach kids? Middle school, the number one topic is identity. Their identity in Christ. If we could say that more than anything else, we're off to a really good spot. It's such a fragile age, but at the same time, they need to be learning about generosity and all these other things that have great value in their faith journey and engagement, what it looks like. So it's like, how do you turn that dial without losing focus on other stuff? How are we intentional about it? I know we'll touch on this a little bit today, but definitely if you're in a generosity initiative, mobilizing the whole church forward, that's a natural place for this to occur, but it's not necessarily the only place that it should occur for us to talk about generosity for kids and students. So we're just wanting to dive in on that today and hopefully get really practical. And at the end, when this episode airs, there'll be a link somewhere. I don't know how they'll do all this in our YouTube thumbnail or in the newsletter or on the blog page where this post, wherever it may be, there'll be a link to some free resources. They'll just give you some ideas on how to engage and execute some of the things we're going to talk about today.
Well, and I love the idea, Frank. I think there might be some people who are asking why, maybe not, but let's just talk about why do we think this is important? I'm going to tell you why I think it's important.
Yeah.
You talked about identity. Well, right after identity is going to come money. They're going to be bombarded with ideas about money and what you do with it and what you don't do with it. You're not even very old before you're trying to figure out how can I earn some money from my parents, allowance or chores or whatever else I do, so that I can do my own thing. And yet at the same point in time, we're not teaching them a lot of times in the church. What does it look like for you to manage that? What does it look like for you to have some of God's money in your hand? And then what do you do with that once you have it in your hand, right? It's this whole idea of teaching them to be good stewards before they're even aware that they're supposed to be good stewards.
That's right.
Right? And then if we do that, what we're doing is we're actually preparing the church of the future with some people who can come in and immediately grab their share of the mantle of responsibility and move it forward, right? So we're hoping that we're planting seeds that will find their full bloom and tree in future churches, right?
That's right.
Starting now.
Let's start
by the way, it's not for what they can give. Because if all the kids in your church could give all the money they can get their hands on, it's not going to change anything you're going to do.
Let's just say our weekly offering at my church, if there are any coins involved, it's from the kids, and we're having to navigate that, right? We're like, okay, what do we do with these 3 nickels, 4 quarters? But praise God, right? So we will figure out what to do with that. And then the pennies, like everybody's like, I literally was somewhere the other day and they were like, do you want the penny? And change their, like literally the cash register person was like, it's going away. It's going away. So he's like, why? So let's talk about this. Here's one good thing. When you talk about generosity with kids and students, parents, whether believers or not, are actually quite grateful. It's a really unique kind of evangelism tool if you position it the right way. And that's, every parent that I know, or at least a lot, are trying to navigate how to battle selfishness, entitlement. These are words that are coming up outside the church. So this is a real felt need. And so if we can find ways to say, hey, let us help you teach your kid. Let's come alongside you. We're not replacing you. We're going to come alongside you, parents, and help you navigate this, because this is hard and it's just going to get more complicated as they get older. And so for us to position this and come in and say, hey, we're just coming alongside of you because we have this shared preferred future for our kids, and that's that we want our kids to be generous and do good in the community. Once again, whether they're a believer or not, that family, that will resonate with them. So there's tremendous opportunity in having this conversation.
Yeah. Parents are going to be the main influencers in helping their kids to figure out the giving, or just to figure out the money equation at all.
That's right.
I mean, I learned it from my dad. My dad was a banker. Both of my grandfathers were bankers, right? So, my dad was a banker, and he was a great churchman. He was a great churchman. He was very involved in our church. We were in a Methodist church back in Augusta, Georgia, where I grew up. And so it was back in the day when they did rotate their pastors a little bit more often. And my dad, I could say he made it his business to become the pastor's good friend when he came there. He wanted the pastor to know, I don't know what else is going to happen in this church, but I'm with you. Yeah, I'm with you, right? And so I saw that. I watched the faithfulness of my dad, when he was writing that check. Some of you that are younger will explain, maybe another episode to explain what checks are. It's a piece of paper that has a number written on it. You take it to the bank. You can actually exchange it for money. I know it seems like a weird idea, but think of it as the predecessor to the debit card. That's what it is, the predecessor to the debit card. But my dad would faithfully write that check every single week and put it in the offering plate. And I watched that. Yeah. Right. And then when my dad, he had a season of his life where he left his career in banking. The small bank that he and another guy had owned had gotten bought out by a larger bank. They served their time there, and they just, for them, they were really small town bankers. They didn't work well with loan committees. They made loans based on, hey, I think I'm going to loan this guy some money. And so my dad exited, and so he had a season where he didn't have a job. And I watched my dad write that check to the church every week. I don't know where that money came from. Yeah. Now, maybe he had, some severance, or maybe he had I don't know where it came from. But here's what I know in my mind. My dad was unemployed and he was still giving to the church. Wow. And so, early on, I saw that, and it marked me later on when I became a Christ follower at age 28. The whole idea of becoming a giver was very quick to Nancy and to me. We would say, we became givers, and then we started becoming generous. We became Christ followers, and then we started becoming generous givers. God started working on us within 15 to 18 months after we gave our lives to Christ. He started working on us with the idea of, I want you to be good givers in God's church. But I'd already been prepared for that because I saw what my dad did. Many of you, I've shared on here, my dad died when I was 19, so I only had 19 years of it. But of the 19 years, there were some things that I saw him do that marked my life even to this point. Wow. And so I would say this to all parents: don't underestimate even if you're not teaching. My dad didn't, and I'm not saying this is right. I would want him to teach, but he didn't have to teach because the life that he lived spoke so loudly to me. Now, I would say teaching on top of habits would be better.
Sure.
Right? But don't underestimate the power of your example. Your kids are watching what you do, and it's going to mark their lives for good or maybe not for good.
That's so good. I will say, growing up, there was no culture of generosity. I didn't grow up in church. No culture of generosity. So if anything, we were receivers of generosity from time to time. And it wasn't modeled particularly well for us to be gracious receivers either. There was some entitlement and some like, gosh, life's made it hard on us. So therefore, if we get something, that's just life giving us a little payback. And, there was certainly no credit to God. But then it's like, okay, how else does this navigate? And so becoming a believer right when I was turning 18, just before I turned 18, started attending church. The tithe was being taught when I was there at this small rural Baptist church with an interim pastor. And it was as I was trying to figure out how to catch up, because I'd only gone to church 3 times in my life. And one of my first things was tithing. And I've heard so many people say, I don't want to offend anybody by teaching tithing and stepping on people's toes. And people have these preconceived notions. I'm a new believer trying to figure it out, and hearing about tithing and generosity was intriguing to me. And I had very little means as a about to be college student coming out of high school. I was working a job. That was compelling. It gave some structure to my faith, and it drew me in. And so I will have a hard time hearing from people that say, hey, it's hard to be a church that can reach the lost or reach those that are fragile in their faith and talk about money. So we've got to avoid talking about money. When I'm sitting there going, actually, that was clarifying for my faith, and it brought some structure. And I'm like, generosity and the life of a believer should look different than what I experienced before. And generosity was one of those things that was very compelling. And the reason why for that generosity was very compelling. So let's jump in and just kind of get really, really practical on some of this to talk about how do we do this. As best I can tell, it is, as you alluded to earlier, we've got to partner with the parents. And so, because they're the ones that are going to be able to model, they're going to be with them more frequently. The average kid is going to be in your church on somewhere around 15 to 20 Sundays a year based on frequency of attendance. So if they're some kind of, in air quotes, regular attenders, then that's about what you're going to get. And so we can make little deposits relationally and invest by supporting parents, but there's got to be some way to help drive this conversation home and equip parents. But remember, all parents aren't created equal in their knowledge and understanding of scripture and generosity and how to sow these seeds and how to have that good conversation with their kids. They may be really good about talking sports with their kids, but maybe not so much faith. They may not have even been praying with their kids on a regular basis. So how are we doing that equipping? One of my favorite resources, that Jess and I have used in ministry for years and years and years, and now we have it as a generosity tool, is you go to a local printer that can print door hangers. Okay. So a door hanger that you would think, but we're not going to put it on the door. They work great on rear view mirrors. And so what you do is they're always in view. And kids are in the car at some point. You always have drive time conversation. So they can either log in on their iPad or not. What if you put 4 questions or 4 conversation starters about generosity on that door hanger hanging there to say, hey, parents, we taught this week or this month. We're teaching about generosity and what it looks like. We want you to spark some conversations in the car ride about what this could look like this week for your family, or where they've experienced generosity or where they've seen other people experience generosity. So from 3 years old all the way up through till they're driving themselves to school, there's this tremendous opportunity to resource parents to drive those conversations. It's hanging there. It's like hard to ignore. It doesn't get stuffed in a baby bag. It doesn't get left in the Bible that they carry to church. They stuck it in there, and they'll open that again in a few weeks when they go back to church. So it's like, how do we make this readily available? Hey, we're handing this to you on the way out. We want you to put it on that rear view mirror before you pull out of the parking lot. Great way. Think of like a handicap placard, something that's just hanging there, very inexpensive, but it's a great way to drive that conversation in a tangible way. Say, parents, we want to help you talk about generosity.
See, Frank, here, I love that for a couple of reasons. First of all, the teaching to the kids. But let's go back to the previous episode when we were talking about, hey, Pastor, one of the things you've got to do for these people who are not good givers, these undeveloped givers in the life of your church, you got to disciple them, is this is actually a stealth discipleship strategy for the adults. Mm-hmm. I mean, I remember in the church that we started, I came out of a Methodist church tradition, and one of the things that we did in the Methodist church was we had a kids sermon. And then one day I figured out, wait, this is not a kids sermon. This is an adult sermon being preached on a kid's level. The adults are the main audience here. It's like, I'm like, wait a second. That's not for my girls. That was actually for me.
Wow.
And so what's happening is we're trying to get to the kids, but we've got to develop the parents so we can get to the kids. So if the parents are undeveloped, this is a great discipleship strategy for them. And if they are already developed, then it just helps them to have a tool to work with their kids. So it's a both and. We're teaching the parents and the kids, which I love in that strategy.
And if you're in the middle of a generosity initiative or some kind of campaign, theming it with the theme of that campaign, it's in front of everybody for those weeks that we're asking everybody to be praying about what God would do and how God would use you. Keeps it right there in front.
Frank, I will never forget. I don't know if I've ever told you this story. This was many years ago. This is over 20 years ago. I had a lot of clients, quite a few clients in the Houston area. And I was sitting at a La Madeleine restaurant back when I used to go to a lot of La Madeleine restaurants. I still like them.
Never heard of it.
It's a French bakery type restaurant.
Sounds fancy.
There's one every now and then.
Hoity-toity is what I would say.
No, they're not. They're like fast casual. It's fast casual food, so it's not upscale.
Sounds fancy.
It does sound fancy, doesn't it? It wasn't. I was sitting in one in Houston, and this guy I noticed him because he was so tall. He walks by, and then he backs up. And he says, hey, I know you, don't I? Well, I'm pretty good with names and faces, as you know.
Yes.
But his face wasn't coming up. It wasn't in the archive somewhere. And I was like, yeah. How do you know me? And he called the name of his church. And I was like, thinking to myself, well, that's a client of mine. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, yeah. I said, what about that? He said, well, I'll never forget you. When you were there, it cost me 3 summer vacations. Huh. What does that mean? So here's the short version of the story. Mm-hmm. He and his wife had already arrived at their decision for their giving commitment. Mm-hmm. And then they were teaching the kids, and the kids came home, and they were told to have a conversation with their parents about their commitment to this new initiative, which was a kids building.
Yeah.
It was a kids building. The kids were the main beneficiaries, right? Go home and have a conversation with your parents about your commitment and talk about your family's commitment. Mm-hmm. Well, what he talked about was, he said, Jim, we have a jar in the kitchen. It's the vacation fund. And he said, by God's grace, we're blessed, and we put about $1,000 a month in that. Now, I put most of it in, but the kids put some money in. My wife put some money in there, and that's what we do for our vacation. Every year we fund it. It's our vacation fund. And we had already decided on our gift to the church. We had never talked about the vacation jar.
Wow.
And my pastor is talking about not equal giving, but equal sacrifice. We've heard that many times.
Yeah.
And our kids came home, and they were talking, and we were having the conversation, and they said, hey, what about the vacation jar? What if we gave some of that money? And he said to me, Jim, when my kids said that, it wrecked my wife and me. It wrecked us. Because all the conversations and all the prayer we'd had about our gift, and we hadn't talked about that.
Wow.
And it was such an obvious place that we could make an additional gift. I said, so what did you do? He said, we gave it up for 3 years.
Wow.
And we had to agree. We're still going to put the money in there as if we're going on vacation. You can't cheat.
Yeah.
And we're going to do staycation. And he said, we've already had 1 year of that. And on Tuesday night, we talked with our kids about why we were doing this.
Wow.
And I said, that's a pretty good
unforgettable for those kids.
It's
unforgettable.
And unforgettable for me.
Yeah.
Right? A story like that.
Wow.
Because he starts off with the line, oh, I'll never forget you. It cost me 3 summer vacations.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, wow. So then I said to him, I said, hey, by the way, I was over there not too long ago, and Pastor gave me a tour of the kids building. It's coming along great. I said, would you do it again? He said, without even thinking about it, I would do it again.
Yeah. That's so cool.
So that's what we miss, is we miss the idea that our kids, it's not the primary reason we're teaching the kids. We're teaching the kids just for the sake of teaching the kids.
Right.
But look what happens. They come home and have this sacred conversation with their mom and dad who end up making a better commitment. Wow. It's not about the money they gave the church. They now, as you and I talk about so many times, they got a better chance to give it a good answer when the Matthew 25:16-30 conversation comes up.
That's
what did you do with the talents I gave to you? What did you do with that?
So good.
Right?
I love that.
Isn't that a good story?
Yeah,
I felt like
really
it fit
great.
in right here. And that was nowhere in our notes.
No.
As you were talking, I was just thinking that's a perfect example of one of the outcomes we hope would happen here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. At the end of the day, we're just trying to spark a conversation and like drive our kids in this area of discipleship that oftentimes gets dismissed or avoided because they're not in a season where they can give much or understand sometimes giving. So we've got to kind of guide them accordingly. Another resource that I just love, that Jess and Mandy on her team have created is a generosity bingo card.
Oh man. I love that thing.
I think it's so cool. Yeah. So you just make a little bingo card and you send it home with the kids to be with the family and say, okay, it's a little 9 square card and you're trying to get a row just like you would normal bingo, but there are different ways that kids can be generous and it's age appropriate. So obviously a 3-year-old doesn't have a lot of money, but they can help their sibling clean up the toy room. They can write a special note to somebody or draw a picture for somebody. They can make treats for a neighbor and go over to a neighbor that's hurting or whatever and just start to spark that. As kids get older, here's one thing that I alluded to in a previous episode, but it's genuinely a concern of mine. And I'm just trying to figure out the best way to solve it. I don't know that I've got it solved yet, but I'm just wrestling with it. And it's this. Now that so much of the generosity at churches outside of a giving initiative is automated, even depending on your kids' programming, first of all, they're not seeing you write a check at the table. Like that's probably not happening very often. They're not sitting beside you in many churches, even during the offering moments. There's nothing being put in the bowl as it goes by, and bowls are kind of going away for many, many churches. There's giving boxes in the back. Yeah. So it's like, wait a second. I can't even witness, like my kids, Jess and I have had a conversation around this. I don't know the last time my kids have seen us put an offering in anything. Right? And so if we're not intentional about having those conversations, then we're missing it. So what does it look like for us to sit down? I met with a family in January of this year, and they do something that I love. They, as a family, so 2 of their kids are out of the house, 3 of their kids are out of the house, one's still in the house or is in college or is around. They do a family meeting right after Christmas time going into January, and they talk about their generosity for the next year.
I love it.
And they say, as a family, so they lump all the money together. You're going to make yours, you're going to do whatever. What are we going to do? Of course, we're going to give to our church. So we know that. We'd like to do something else. What do we want to focus on? And what they do is they choose a family focus to say, this year, we're going to do our part to make a dent in this issue in our world.
Wow.
And so any above and beyond generosity, unless they have a clear push from the Holy Spirit, they just agree and pray over the course of the year to fix and help with whatever. So maybe it's James 1:27 and they're like, we have had somebody close to us lose a spouse. And so we've seen the pain of this widow. So we're going to be really intentional with widows this year. And we just want to come alongside not only them, but other things and ministries that can do that. In fact, we talked to a ministry just recently that's doing
last week.
Cool
Crazy.
Work. Really cool work. And so as a family going, hey, we're going to be generous. We're going to grow in generosity. How are we going to do this? Now you're involving the kids. We did this at a micro level, my wife and I. We did for a quarter. We did this, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years ago. And we set aside just a little bit of money above and beyond our tithes. And we got the kids to scheme in with this. So, this was 2 years ago, so before Isaac went off to college. And we said, hey, we're going to see people that are serving us. It's going to be at a restaurant or a coffee shop. And we're going to have to all be in agreement. But every once in a while, we want to go way above and beyond with our tip or our gift to them. But there's got to be a reason, and it's got to be driven by the kids. So they've got to be the one about, I think this might be the one. I think, man, I was just hearing them talk, or the way they're going above and beyond. They're working so hard, but gosh, I remember we were at an IHOP after a basketball tournament, and one of the kids says something. There's the two older kids, Jess and I, and Malachi was with us. We're sitting there at this IHOP in between games, because at that age, Isaac can still eat 50 pancakes and then go play another game. No big deal, right? So it's like, good for him. So we're sitting at this IHOP because that's what he wanted. That's fine. And I can't remember which one, Isaac or Layla, said, hey, I think she's one to bless. And I said, why do you say that? And we were just kind of real discreet about it. And so what we did was, I didn't want to automate it. So I gave $100 bill to Isaac. Isaac's like, I'm going to walk over and hand it to her. We're going to do our normal tip. This is above and beyond. So this is our tip or whatever. And he's like, I'm going to go take it over her discreetly.
So I don't want to there's the blessing on top of that.
That's exactly right. Okay. Yeah. I'm not taking away from like her normal compensation. And so slips it over to her, and then we just go sit down, and we were like, it was such a great moment for us, and we're leaving. Like, it was like great. It was a blessing. She said, thank you so much. She came back over and sought us out and started crying and had this incredible moment where she was trying to figure out who to text, because she didn't have enough gas to go pick up her kid after work, and was trying to figure out, she didn't have enough money, wasn't getting paid. Mm-hmm. And so she was trying to figure out how to make it all work. And she was like, this was an answer to prayer, because I didn't know who to text to my family to help me with this. And she was like, I was in a complete bind, and she's like crying, and it was this powerful moment. I will say this. I think if Isaac and Layla were here and I said IHOP, they would be able to tell you that story. Yeah. Now, I will tell you that 999 other times I got it completely wrong. Okay. So that was that one time we got it right. Okay. We're trying to grow with this, Jim. But here's what I know. I've gotten to see glimpses of it. And I want this for the families of the churches we serve, to see moments when kids have those little moments where it clicks, where generosity shapes them, where they see the impact of their generosity, and it just hits at a different level. So, once again, how as a church are we equipping parents to be able to have those conversations so those moments that mark us cannot be missed?
Yeah. Well, this is not in the script, but it's going to kind of follow a little bit behind your script. It's a personal passion of mine. Yeah. And it's IHOP. I'm going to add in another place, Waffle House.
Oh, yeah.
The men and ladies who are servers in those places are working on generally very small tickets. And my guess is many of them are struggling economically, many of them. And so I would just say, if you're out there and you're a Christ follower and you go to Waffle House or IHOP, your gratuity should not be based on the amount of that check.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to spend that much. I mean, I take myself and my two grandkids, the two boys, and we go to Waffle House and it's $23.
Yeah.
I mean, am I really going to leave her a $3 tip? No, I'm not.
You're right.
I'm going to probably leave her a $10 tip or something. Maybe I'll just leave her 100%.
Yeah.
Because it's not that much. It doesn't change my lifestyle. It doesn't change your lifestyle. But you can bless somebody who's struggling. And you never know the story, Frank.
That's right.
Just like you guys didn't know the story. You just knew you were supposed to do a blessing. And you got a providential prompt in this woman.
Yes. And what I loved about it was the kids that felt
drove
the
decision. I love that.
And I will tell you this, that lady may or may not remember the $100. I don't know. But our kids
doesn't matter.
Still remember today. So it's like, great. And so I here's where I stand. If the church isn't teaching parents how to do this, and you hear this a lot on this podcast, where I'm just saying, if it's not us, then who?
Then who?
If it's not the church,
not us.
Who's the one teaching this, inspiring this, and driving this? And so I think that we have a generation of parents that would greatly appreciate being equipped to teach their kids generosity. I don't think they need any help teaching selfishness or greediness or consumerism. No. That is not a problem. That's already being taught.
That water is sliding downhill and it doesn't have anything interrupting it.
That's exactly right. We need to be
the ones who interrupt that.
And so as a church and church leaders, I would just highly recommend that we're intentional about driving generosity and the conversation of generosity with kids and students.
Well, and here's the thing, Frank. If you're a parent and you're listening to this, maybe you're asking the question, and maybe you started off by asking the question, is generosity caught or taught? And I would say both. You got to both teach it and model it in front of your kids. And the more you can do both, the better chance you have of reproducing kids who are generosity-based people themselves. And if that happens, if that happens, I think there's a really good chance that you can battle against what we call the anxiety syndrome that's so prevalent among young people, right? The peer pressure and the impressions and all the things that they're battling. Because if you become generous, there's a really good chance that you'll find contentment and true life satisfaction apart from just needing to use money to do something for you. You actually understand what it looks like to have some of God's money in your hands, to let it draw you closer to Him and bring glory and honor to His name, and oh, by the way, to help you flourish as a human being.
Yeah. I'm going to add one final thought. Pastors who are listening.
Here it comes.
The solution can't be go to your kids' pastor as soon as you're done listening to this, or forward this to them and say, figure it out.
Yeah.
Most kids pastors and student pastors, definitely kids pastors, because of the volunteer ratios and all the stuff that they're navigating, their plate is full.
Yes, it is.
So simply adding another thing to do without resourcing or guiding, it can be quite burdensome. So maybe your church is staffed in a different way, but for most leaders that I see, adding another to-do here without equipping is going to be quite difficult. Yeah. And so whether it be leveraging on the resources and say, hey, why don't we start with one or two of these resources that Generis is giving us? Great. Give them a little clarity, a little lane, not in the next one-on-one. By the way, in addition to everything else you do, we need to get into a regular rhythm of generosity and just kind of like throw it in their lap and walk away. That would be the equivalent of handing them a grenade that you've pulled the pin and say, don't drop this one too. It's just a lot. Once again, all these things we talk about that are overwhelming sometimes for senior pastors, executive pastors, and leadership teams. There's so much to do in church, and we're heaping on with all this that we think is really important. Be mindful of the same thing for the kids ministry and student ministry leaders you serve. They probably need a little more equipping and support than check out this podcast. Let's start doing this better.
Wow. Frank, thanks so much for leading us so well today. I know that, we both have a passion for this, but you're a little closer to the action than I am. You have kids, and you're married to someone who's just a big champion. Mm-hmm. She, along with Mandy Holcomb and our team, just really drive that on our side, and they're so good. And hopefully some of the content that we've given today will just give our listeners a taste of what could happen if you took on the responsibility, the mantle of responsibility of mentoring your children and youth in biblical generosity. So that'll wrap it up for today for this episode of Next Sunday, and we'll look forward to seeing you next Sunday.
2 weeks.
Next 2 weeks. Thanks, guys.